When he took the helm of the DepEd, he knew it wouldn't be an easy task. He inherited the immense problems of the education system, a consequence of years of neglect and underinvestment. What are his plans for the department? What reforms can we expect? Hi, I'm Bonz, Magsambol. This is Rappler Talk. Today, we are joined by Education Secretary Sonny Angara. Hello, Secretary. Welcome to Rappler.
Hi, thank you for having me. Salamat.
So you've been the secretary since July. So
Alam naman natin maraming problema dito sa departamento. I think what I can say is I found a very 20th century institution. Maraming magagaling na tao, pero siguro yung mga sistema dito sa department were very old-fashioned in a way. We didn't maximize the use of technology. We weren't a very efficient organization. So we're trying to change that and change the culture, also to be more data-driven, to have evidence-based decisions, I think. Tapos less centralization, less centralized sa central office because we have 200 division offices, we have 46,000 schools. So we want to empower them at that level. They can make their own decisions. Hindi na kahit kada decision lalapit pa sa amin for approval.
you took you took over DepEd from Vice President Sara Duterte in July 2024. How would you describe your first few months?
Very busy. Very busy. A lot of issues kasi papasok na ng budget season yon.
Right.
So we had to learn the budget very quickly and present to Congress, the House of Representatives. So it was a very busy time. Ginagabi kami dito. At we tried to learn as much as we could. It's a very big organization. We have over 1 million employees. Sa teachers, over 900,000. Almost 900,000, I think.
Yeah.
So
it's almost a million.
yeah. So that's over 100,000 non-teaching personnel. So there's a lot of people to take care of. And kailangan efficient kayo if you want to get things done, if you want to also have an organization which is connected, and then, masyadong ano siya. I found that DepEd was too top-down,
Okay.
meaning laging galing sa taas yung instructions. So we want to have something where, there's a flow of information and decision-making.
Right.
May bottom-up, may top-down, di ba? And there's also, even the other officials are heard.
So are you looking into changing the way we do things or you do things here at the
Yes, definitely. I think we've done a lot of what you might call administrative reforms,
Right.
or changes in the way we decide. Like when we meet with our regional directors, we actually go to the regions.
Right.
Those meetings used to be held in Manila. Now we actually go to the regions and we actually visit the schools to see how our children are doing. And I realized there are a lot of innovative practices and best practices done in the regions in certain schools. Malit na eskwela man siya, magaling pala siya sa robotics, or di ba? May magagaling na bata sa chemistry, or may mga inventions sila. We saw a school in Olongapo where they use hair to clean up an oil spill.
Right.
May magaling ang gagaling ng mga bata. So we're trying to find a way na somehow these practices or these methods become mainstream. It's hard, it's hard to scale up always. No, I think DepEd has seen so many outstanding practices at a small level, but how do you scale it up? That's always the challenge, I think.
Yeah. So you had been a lawmaker actually for decades. You've been in politics for decades. What skills in politics are needed in managing a bureaucracy like the DepEd? Ano kaya yung pwede mong may apply dito?
It's a good question. Maybe people skills. I think dealing with people, dealing with politicians also.
Right.
I think dealing with Congress is an important part of your job because you have to lobby for a budget, a budget that is helpful to you as an agency. Managerial skills also. I was chair of the Committee on Finance, so and also in the House I was chair of the Committee on Higher Education, and then I was also a member of the Education Commission, the second Education Congressional Commission, which was meant to oversee, mag-oversight siya sa buong education system, not only DepEd, TESDA, CHED, PRC. So being a part of that, nakita ko yung problema from a bird's eye view, systemic. It's very hard kasi pag ikaw yung nakaupo sa DepEd o sa TESDA, sa CHED, pag-aaralan mo pa yung mga problema tapos ikaw pa mag-i-implement. So nakakatulong na nandyan si EDCOM at sinasabi, eto dapat yung roadmap, dito dapat tayo papunta. Di ba? Kung wala si EDCOM, di natin malalaman na may 4,400 vacancies pala tayo sa guidance counselors, sa principals. Yung pagkukulang natin yung mismatch sa pagturo ng mga espesyalista, science teachers, math teachers. Lahat ng pagkukulang na yun, yun yung naumpisahan ng pag-aaral ng EDCOM, which we also authored and were active in when we were a senator back in 2022. We authored the EDCOM law.
You mentioned two things. One is the budget cut and the other is the EDCOM 2 report. So let's talk about first the controversial budget cut. Who did you talk to when you learned about it? You had been a lawmaker for decades, of course. Did you see it coming or was it totally unexpected?
I was very surprised, actually. I texted the people I knew. Of course, and I got a text from the president. Nag-message ako sa social media when I found out na, nakat yung budget namin. I knew kasi, pag at that level, hindi mo na mabago kasi, ratified na by Congress. So, that's pretty much batas na yun, kumbaga. So, nung nalaman ni Presidente yun, nag-text siya sa akin ng 3:00 ng umaga of, I think, the Friday or the Saturday following the budget cut. Sabi niya, tawagan natin si DBM Secretary at gawa natin ang paraan yan para yung cut na yung cut dun sa President's program for computers yon.
Right.
So I think almost 10 billion was cut from that. There was also 1.5 billion cut from the classroom construction, school building construction program. There was also, I think, a cut from the hiring of teachers, the program for the hiring of teachers, all of which are very important problems of the department. So, na-appreciate ko yung quick action on the part of the President. And of course, pumasok na rin si DBM Secretary Pagandaman, si DOF Secretary Recto, and they said, if we are able to raise additional revenues in 2025, then we will allot a certain portion to make up for the budget cut.
Secretary, I'm just wondering, because you have allies in the Senate, of course, you've been a senator for like years there. Yeah. And then, di ba, meron kayo dong solid Black 7 before, and then, since umalis kayo, may 6 bomb na nandun. Pinag-usapan nyo ba at some point itong nangyaring budget cut?
Yes, actually. And many of them did not know about it.
Okay.
So, because at the House level, they added 500 million to our budget. At the Senate level, when the Senate passed it, they added 3 billion to our budget. So we were expecting baka madagdagan pa yon pagdating sa BICAM. So na-shock kami na nabawasan actually. And it hadn't happened also for the last few years na nakakat yung budget ng DepEd at saka ng education sector in general.
So let's go now to the EDCOM report. So students are being left behind. The EDCOM 2 report says there are grade 8 and grade 9 students who still haven't learned skills they should have learned while in grade 4. How is the DepEd addressing this issue?
Well, I think that's very well known. Not only this year's report of the EDCOM, but even in the previous years. Na yung learning loss was already 2.5 years before the pandemic, so 2020. Tapos nangyari yung pandemic. So that set us back another 1.5 years. So you're talking about a four-year learning deficit. No? So, importante dyan, we already had our recovery program. Then we had some programs like Catch Up Fridays. Pero yung Kongreso, kumilos na at pinasa nila yung aral law. Ano yung aral law? Yun yung isang batas na ang intention is to tutor some of our learners who are suffering severe learning loss. So yun, they will spend extra hours just doing the basics for reading comprehension, for literacy, for numeracy. Just kasi ito yung building blocks of learning. Kung hindi nila nakuha yan, mahirap mag-build. Yung struktura mo, marupok going forward. So, importante na maganda ang pundasyon. And that aral program is an attempt by both Congress and of course kami, we will implement the law to strengthen the foundations of our educational system. Itong mga, especially those in the pandemic. Yung mga nasa pandemya, ngayon nasa grade 4 to 6 na yun. So, usually in terms of intervention, you think of the younger years, pero hindi. Itong mga lumabas pa ng pandemya, natamaan din sila. So, any intervention must cover as far in fact, maybe all years, but definitely yung key stage 1, that's kindergarten to grade 3. And then yung grade 4 to grade 6, sabi nung UNICEF sa amin, don't forget those guys because they were the ones who went through the pandemic and they suffered a lot of learning loss.
Right. Actually, Sec, when you read the report kasi, parang it's not just about, of course, the problem of the DepEd, pero kasi 97% of the Filipino parents don't believe yung critical, na importante yung critical, di ba? Parang 9 in 10 actually Filipino parents think na masyado pang bata yung mga anak nila for school. So, ano sa tingin nyo yung critical na role dapat na gawin ng mga household, of course? Kasi hindi lang siya DepEd right?
Yes, absolutely. You're absolutely correct, Bonz. No? Ang nangyari dito, I think nakakoncentrate tayo sa, college, funding, access problems, meaning, making it affordable to go to school from kinder to grade 12 and even college. Ngayon, nagkaroon na tayo ng free college law. Nakalimutan natin yung pundasyon. That's why I think if you look at the EDCOM report, it's fixing the foundations, di ba? May picture siya nung struktura ng isang building, may nakaupo doon. It's really the foundation that we realize is very crucial. And that foundation, kami, pumapasok ang mga bata sa amin, 5 years old.
Right.
So, there's a lot that can be done before that time, actually. So, yun ang maganda sa EDCOM, tinignan niya pati yung ECCD or yung Early Child Care and Development System natin. At doon nakita na maraming malnourished, maraming stunted, hindi nakakakain. Maraming local government units na walang daycare center.
Right.
So, kung tinignan mo yung 3 to 4-year-olds, ano yung porsyento ng mga bata na nasa daycare center? It's 19%. Where are the 81%?
Yeah.
Diba? Nasa bahay sila. Anong ginagawa nila? Nakakakain ba sila? Binabasahan ba sila ng mga parents nila, di ba?
Right.
Or baka nanonood lang sila ng TV, di ba? Or nasa computer lang sila na di natin alam, hindi supervised yung content nila. So those are the things that I think we are looking at going forward. How to, kasi meron tayong school feeding law which requires us to feed kinder to grade 6.
Yeah.
What about before kinder?
Exactly.
Science tells us that the brain is fully formed by year 5. 90% formed ang human brain by year 5. So pag hindi na kumilos, mawawala sa atin yung mga bata na yon. And ang masaklap dyan, science also tells us that if there is damage in terms of malnutrition, in terms of the brain developing improperly, that damage is irreversible.
Right.
It's irreversible. You cannot reverse it anymore. Kahit anong gawin ng school system, kahit anong galing ng school system mo, hindi mo na mabago yung damage before 5 years old. So that now, nare-realize natin, buntis pa lang, that's the importance of prenatal nutrition. The first 1,000-day program, kailangan i-scale up yan. I think we will be, and EDCOM, I think, will also be recommending a amendment to the school feeding law, to the feeding law. Because there, it says kinder to grade 6. Tapos merong bakante dun parang, I think it's years 3 to 4 or 4 to 5 na walang feeding program at all ang gobyerno. And if you look at Indonesia, they're doing school feeding program across the board.
Across the board.
From bata pa lang. So, nakikita nila. I mean, it's not a problem unique to the Philippines.
Right.
And if kung nagtataka tayo, bakit tayo naiiwan, it's because of these things that we see.
You took the role actually, the DepEd leadership, July 19. And then weeks later, nag-school opening naman. During that school opening, you had the front row seat of what's really happening in the education system. I was with you. We were covering the school opening. So, yung mga teachers na nakausap namin, they were in the dark about the Matatag curriculum. That's actually the banner program of the Vice President under her term. But yun nga, yung implementation kasi ng Matatag curriculum has been chaotic. Like, we've been receiving feedback from the ground. The teachers were saying na hindi nila alam what's going to happen with this curriculum. How's your review of the curriculum so far, and what's your plan for it?
I think ganun talaga pag bago yung curriculum, and there are some areas of uncertainty. Those are the things you have to address going forward, the implementation issues. So like for instance, yung Catch-up Friday, sinabi na walang kulang sa guidelines. So now we're trying to, actually na supersede na yun by the Aral Law. But things like that, that's why it's important na nakikinig kayo sa baba and you have feedback mechanisms, no, Bonz. So sa Matatag, okay naman. We had a study commission by PIDS and RITQ, which are assessment organizations. And nakita nila na there are some responses, but some teachers are also looking for clearer guidance on the ground. So we'll issue supplementary guidelines if needed dito sa mga sa pag-implement ng curriculum. And of course, as you know, the Matatag curriculum only went as far as K to 10. So meron pa tayong grades 11 and 12. Which is a fairly new reform in terms of our curriculum that's a decade old. So yun talaga tinitingnan, ang tinututukan natin, and we're trying to rush a revised senior high school curriculum. Kasi sa ngayon, students are required to take 31 subjects. And mamimili sila, papasok ka ng grade 11, mamimili ka. Academic track, magka-college ka. Tech-voc track, magte-tech-voc vocational courses ka. Arts track, tapos sports track. Yung arts and sports, less than 1% ang kumukuha nun. Kulang din ang pasilidad. So karamihan tech-voc and academic ang pinipili. But they are required to take so many subjects. They're required to take 31 subjects. At dun sa 31, ang pinipili lang nila 6 o 7. So we're really looking at revising that. Pinag-aralan namin yung mga sistema sa buong mundo. Marami na yung 10 hanggang 12 na subject for the senior high school.
Right.
So, yung core na dati ay nasa 15 subjects. Gagawin na lang namin mga 4 o 5 na lang. Yes. Para yung bata, essential yung mga kukunin niya. It's like essential communication skills, essential life skills na lang. Something that will really help him when he enters the world of work, when he becomes an adult. And then, yung rest, yung natitira, siya pipili.
Right.
Siya pipili nung... Of course, dahil wala nang tayong tracks na business track ka or science track ka, wala na yon. Mamimili na yung estudyante. Importante na yung career guidance niya.
Right.
So that's something the department needs to strengthen. Has not been very good at. And because maybe nga kasi kulang tayo sa guidance counselors. But, you know, there's so much information on the internet now that can make up for that actually. It's just showing, rather than telling people, ganito yan, it's just showing them, ito yan. Parang, we suggest, kung mag-engineer ka, you take these courses. Kung we suggest, kung mag-arkitekto ka, itong mga kukunin mo sa senior high school. May suggestions kami. And of course, these are things that kids can discuss among themselves, with their peers, with adults, with mentors. Kumbaga, hindi na singular sources of information tayo.
Sec, meron na ba tayong tinitingnan na timeline dito for the new revised K-12 curriculum? Because it looks promising.
Yeah, well, we'll issue it before the start of the 2025-2026.
Okay.
The original, kasi was the original goal was 2026-27.
Right.
Pero sabi natin, pwede na nating issue yung curriculum. And then, pero hindi natin pipilitin lahat ng eskwelahan because it's a very drastic.
Right.
It's a reform that requires a lot of moving parts. Maraming magbabago. Mag-hire ka ng new faculty. You need to see if you have the facilities. You need to see if you can offer all of the electives that you want. So schools have to do a lot of planning here. So we'll be flexible going forward. Para that's a message we want to communicate to our schools. Para they feel encouraged. And at the same time, consultations are ongoing with the schools para yung feedback. At saka kahit na-implement na siya, hindi naman final product yan. Right. Eventually, magbabago pa rin.
Magpa-pilot lang muna.
Yes, pilot. And then,
right.
Based on experience, based on implementation, ano yung pinakamaganda.
Meanwhile, a House bill has been filed to allow qualified students to skip senior high school. What's your take on this as the Education Secretary?
Well, I think yung pagkaintindi ko dun sa House bill, may pathway siya for qualified senior high school students to leave. Hindi na siya, kung college ready na siya, hindi na siya mag-grade 11 or 12. Sa akin, okay naman yun kasi we must give, the more pathways we have for our students, the better.
Right.
Oo. So, wag lang maging butas siguro para pumasok dun yung ayaw na mag-aral, di ba?
Right.
Lalabas na lang siya using that route. So siguro kailangan bantayan natin yun. Pero definitely in terms of giving more pathways, I think the thinking of the House there is on the right track.
And then one of the promises actually of K-12 was for the senior high school graduates to get employed immediately after senior high school. Siguro sa partong DepEd, clear na yun yung goal. But industry-wise, parang hindi, di ba? Kasi may mga study, of course, there has been like a PBED study, PIDS study, na parang mas preferred pa rin ng mga industry natin. Of course, yung college graduate, ang mga i-employ nila.
Yes,
may nangyayari ba na coordination ngayon, or at least have you been talking to industry leaders, please hire our senior high school? May mga ganun ba?
Yes, madami. In fact, we signed a memorandum with over yung P Corp, that's the part of the PSAC, Private Sector Advisory Council. Andun si Presidente at andun yung mga representatives of the big industry associations, Philippine Chamber of Commerce, IBPAP, that's the IT BPO Association, na dadagdagan namin yung work experience.
Okay.
Para it's for industry to know the potential employees better. Kasi sa ngayon, parang 80 to 180 or 200 hours tayo. They want to go up to I think to 600 hours kung di ako nagkakamali. No? So, okay naman yun dahil pabor din sa bata yun.
Right.
Dahil dun sa bata, he will learn more in that time. That's why, that's another good thing about decongesting the senior high school curriculum. Pag binawasan mo ng subject yan, mas maraming oras yung bata para mag-work immersion. Again, these are things that we're giving them the option to do. Kung papunta na siyang college track, it's up to him kung pwede siyang mamili na magtrabaho siya sa isang kumpanya o mag-capstone project siya, meaning parang thesis or practical application ng natutunan niya. These are options that we're going to give to the students. So.
Let's go now to the teachers. Of course, meron tayong perennial problem that they are overworked. Repetitive paperwork adds to the burden. Yung sinasabi ng mga teachers, na-submit na nila itong data nito, so dapat daw may record na yung DepEd or yung division nila. Pero hihingin ulit sa susunod na taon or months. So parang yun daw, nakakadagdag pa or nakaka-lessen nung time na dapat i-google lang nila sa pagtuturo. How is the DepEd going to lighten itong mga ganitong problema? Pwede ba siyang i-digitize na para at least hindi na nila kailangang balikan itong mga data na to?
Yan yung sinasabi ko, we're a 20th century institution, Bonz. We need to go into the 21st century and have advanced data management system. Sayang yung information namin, such a big organization. The companies know that information is very valuable and you can learn so much and implement very positive, good programs with it. So sa teachers, na-discover namin na some teachers have to file as many as 100 reports. And then, if you look at the old equivalent of the EDCOM report, yun ang reklamo, 1920s, yan ang reklamo na ng mga teacher. Ang daming pinapagawang administrative. So ngayon, I think the president is on the right track because he's allotting more administrative personnel to DepEd. Ano mangyayari dyan? Mas yung mga non-teaching tasks, hindi na si teacher ang gagawa.
Okay.
And then yun sa reports required of teachers, we're really going to narrow it down to the absolute necessary. Below 20 kung kaya namin gagawin. And very simplified. Pati yung laman ng report, ikakat na natin yung hindi necessary na information. So we're about to issue a new department order on that actually.
Okay.
Na matutuwa nga ang teachers natin.
Yeah.
Palagay ko.
Good news to sa ating mga teachers. Anyway, on another note, of course, another like alarming or na sad fact dun sa EDCOM report was 62% of the teachers are teaching subjects they do not know. 'Di ba? So, parang ito, how can you expect students, of course, to solve mathematical equations when teachers themselves are having a hard time solving them, di ba? Parang yun yung pinaka-quick na pwede mong maisip din sa problema ngayon. So, ito nakita natin na parang sanga-sanga siya na problem eh. Of course, yung yung education nila, yung foundation ng mga teachers na to, sa college, sa CHED, may nangyayari bang coordination, of course, among agencies. How is your department trying to solve this issue?
Mahabang kwento to, Bonz, pero let me try to state what we're doing briefly. No? As you mentioned, kulang ng coordination between DepEd and CHED. DepEd should have told CHED na we need so many science teachers. Please provide scholarships so we can, yung mga education majors, there'll be more people taking up science major. We need more guidance counselors. So dapat yung mga ganong demands, dapat pinaalam ng DepEd namin sa CHED. But of course, I was not in the department then. But now we're doing that. But unfortunately, as you know, it's not hard to produce, it's not easy to produce graduates overnight, you know. Kailangan may mag-enroll dyan and finish the 4-year course. So in the short term, what do? We need to have refresher courses for those who maybe did not pass the LET, but can take certain courses to be specialists in certain subjects. Pwede daw yun. Tapos yung hiring beyond the division. Kasi usually yung hiring within the division. And there's a law which says you must favor those from a certain locality. So sometimes that limits you in your hiring. You must maging flexible tayo sa titingnan natin. And in the past, pag nag-advertise daw kami for teachers, hindi namin sinasabi yung specialty. So ngayon, sasabihin namin, teacher in math. Hiring teacher in science. Dati hindi, teacher lang. Kaya that contributes to the mismatch. Kasi may mismatch ka na sa graduates ng education sa pangangailangan mo. Tapos hindi mo pa tinulungan dun sa hiring mechanism.
Right.
So all of these things I hope will kahit pa paano we'll get closer to a solution.
Yeah. Actually, realities on the ground, yung sinabi mo about Mat 1 yung dapat nakukunin, pero yung estudyante, graduate siya, of course, no Filipino major. Pero alam mo, yung goal niya talaga is to be part of DepEd, regardless kung ano yung ituturo niya, ititake niya yun eh. Di ba ganun yung nangyayari? Anyway, from that, let's talk about the principals. So, an EDCOM report, of course, yung year to then found na 55% pala ng mga public schools natin. That's more than half actually. Ang walang school principal. That's alarming because sino yung magko-command sa kanila? How can you, 'di ba, facilitate itong mga learning reforms na wala na pala silang leader?
Yeah.
'Di ba? That's really important. And then, but there was a good news recently, of course, under your leadership when you announced that it is targeting 1 principal per school by 2026. Can you elaborate more on how the department plans to achieve this?
Well, una, balikan natin bakit nangyari ito. Dahil maraming hindi pumapasa ng principal exam. That's called the NQuest. Ang passing rate dun, parang 20+% lang ang pumapasa. So, may backlog tayo ng qualified applicants dyan. Tapos may policy dati na pag maliit ang school, 1 principal for 3 schools.
Okay.
So, these are the things we have to change going forward. Ngayon, the policy under President Marcos is 1 school, 1 principal. How do we do that? We have to adjust. I think we're also looking at adjusting the NQuest or the principal exam. Dahil nakita nung Undersecretary namin for Human Relations, si Yusek Cabral, nakita niya na 80% ng mga kumukuha ng NQuest are qualified naman.
Okay.
Pero doon lang sila sumasabit minsan sa written exam.
Okay.
So we're trying to find a proxy or something that would show that they are capable of leading a school without necessarily passing the exam. So we're trying to, and then at the same time, all these schools may teacher in charge, may head teacher yan. So ano na lang namin, tamang-tama, priority ni President Marcos yung career progression, yung pag-promote sa mga deserving employees. So a lot of these head teachers will be promoted so long as they comply with certain requirements. Doon papasok yung sinabi naming we will have maybe 15,000 new principals, although that's a bit optimistic.
Yeah. So another positive news, of course, the DepEd also recently signed a memorandum of agreement with the National Electrification Administration to provide electricity to last mile schools. So EDCOM 2 said 1,500 last mile schools still don't have power. How will this MOA be implemented and what's the time frame?
Yeah, kakapirma lang namin ng MOA na yan with NEA, with Secretary Lotilla was there, Secretary of Energy, and then si NEA Administrator Nani Almeda. Andun lahat ng co-ops sa buong bansa. Kasi unlike Manila, which is kung saan ang distribution utilities, Meralco, dun sa probinsya, mga electric cooperative. So, meron tayong may model na ginawa si NEA na solar-powered ang schools. So, this was developed in conjunction with UP. So, dun sa signing namin, nandun din si UP President, and the School of Engineering of UP. And the cost is 1.2 million per school. So, may budget para dyan. So, hopefully, we can do 1,000 schools or more in the coming year. Ma-electrify natin. Although, challenging nga to dahil usually, ang location ng schools na to ay yung typical last mile schools, nasa bundok, nasa isla. So, talagang, we anticipate there will be challenges in implementation.
Yeah. Pero Sec, I'm just wondering, were you surprised to know na meron palang 1,500 na schools na walang electricity? Kasi we've been saying na dapat digital na tayo ngayon. I mean, it's 21st century. Kailangan connected na yung mga estudyante natin sa internet. Pero, di ba, yung basic na electricity pala, wala sila. So, how can you expect them to charge their laptops or to be connected to the internet?
Totoo yan. Kasi pumunta kami ng Kalayaan Island a few months ago sa Pag-asa Island. And then, doon, may nagbigay ng mga computer sa kanila. Pero hindi nila ma-charge dahil wala silang kuryente. Tapos, may dalawa silang Starlink for the internet. Nasira yung isa. So, nung pinasok namin yung Khan Academy software, na kung saan mapapadali yung buhay ni teacher, na yung lesson plan niya, hindi na isang araw, less than 1 hour, magawa na niya yung lesson plan niya. At yung mga quizzes, lahat automated na. Hindi nakayanan nung mga buong klase. Kahit yung demo lang, kulang yung power. So that's something that after ma-electrify yung 1,000 schools, meron tayong underpowered schools. Okay. Yun ang next level of problems that we have to tackle. libo-libo din yon na kulang ang power and yung bandwidth. But at the same time, may mga programa din na si Presidente dyan, yung free wifi, yung pagpapalawak ng internet sa buong bansa, yan ay priority rin ni Presidente. So hindi lahat naman pinapasa ng DepEd, kumbaga, may katulong din tayo dyan. No?
Okay, the DepEd, of course, was also in the news recently, not because of the learning crisis, but because of the Comprehensive Sexuality Education, or CSE. What's your view on this? What's your take on the CSE?
Well, sa akin, I think there are some concerns, and I met with some of the church groups, the more conservative groups na concerned about the implementation. And natakot ako dahil sinabi nila, tinuturo daw yung masturbation sa grades sa kindergarten, sa prep, sa grade 4. Eh, tinignan namin, hindi naman daw, walang ganong tinuturo. So, but nonetheless, it was good on our part to be able to re-examine the reproductive health policy. Kasi batas yan eh.
Right.
Meron tayong reproductive health law which I was still in the House when we passed that bandang 2011. At nakasaad naman sa batas na kailangan mag-provide tayo ng age-appropriate education to our students, to our learners, about their bodies and about the consequences of reproduction, of intercourse. Lahat yan. It's part of their maturing process. No? So, important dyan yung age-appropriate and yung standard na i-employ. I think na-alarma yung mga ibang tao kasi yung existing DepEd policy na naabutan namin dito may reference to international standards.
Okay.
So, dun sila natakot. Baka gayahin natin yung mga ibang bansa na kung saan iba naman yung iba yung kultura, iba rin yung physical development ng isang bata. So, we had to assure people na, no, we will be following strictly the Philippine context and Philippine culture. We'll be respecting Philippine culture. Of course, ideally, tinuturo na ng mga magulang sa bata yan. Pero I think alam naman natin, given the reality of the Philippine family, maraming wala yung di nakatira sa magulang or wala yung isa o dalawang magulang. At means kung nandyan yung magulang, nahihiya naman siyang pag-usapan itong mga masesela na bagay. Then the school has to step up also.
Right. To solve the challenges in the Philippine education, especially the learning poverty, how do you intend to work with the private sector and the education advocates?
That's probably the easier part, Bonz, of the job because ang daming gustong tumulong dito. So many people like Khan Academy is the biggest soft ed tech company in the world and they're offering their software for free. The licensee, si Geraldine Acuña Sunshine, it's now in over 1,500 schools all over the country. So we're hitting hundreds of thousands of students. Eh yun lang nga, minsan hindi sila nakakapasok ng isang eskwelahan. Yung software na yun, binabayad yun sa ibang bansa. Sa atin, libre. Binigay sa atin, libre.
Okay.
And Smart is giving, for those who use Khan Academy software, they're giving 5 gig free.
Right.
Free for education. So, ang daming talagang gustong tumulong in that respect. No? There are those giving their services for free also. Yung mga front learners, yung si DLP, that's Dr. Chris Bernido, that's a pioneering system done in Bohol. We're looking kasi at nakikita namin yung learning loss in terms of lost days. Dito if you look at sa Bicol, yan, they've lost already 40 plus school days.
Right.
Nasa third quarter pa lang tayo. So, sa pag-aaral nga ng EDCOM, ang average loss is parang 30 days. Yung iba, nasa 40 to 50 days na yung iba. What do they do? Kung walang internet, we're pioneering this dynamic learning program kung saan, kahit sa bahay, pwede mag-aral. It's tested in Bohol. It's produced very good results. So we're trying to roll that out, especially in places where may double, triple shifting, di nakakapasok yung bata. Of course, but ideally, we'd also like to improve yung distance learning. Kasi yun yung isang lesson from the pandemic. Paano kung magkaroon tayo ng ulit, nangyari yun? Are we ready, di ba?
And then, since you mentioned about the distance learning, plano ba, how are we going to strengthen this? Like for example, kasi 'di ba, may gradual return na tayo sa old academic calendar, which kaya natin ginawa yung pagbalik because of the extreme heat din sa weather conditions. But at the same time, when we go back naman, yung problema naman natin is typhoon season. So hindi natin maiiwasan yung class suspension, right?
Yes.
So parang alam mo yun, parang it's just another parang band-aid solution if we go back and forth and with the school calendar. So how is your department going to strengthen the distance learning given that most of our students still lack access
Yes.
sa computers?
Yun yung reality. That's what the reality is. The many don't have access to computers. That's why we are using this dynamic learning program ni Dr. Bernido. He won a Magsaysay Award for it in Bohol. It was implemented a decade ago.
Right.
And some provinces have adopted it, I think, sa Sarangani. And the results are very good. The test results, yung test results ng ibang schools, kasing level ng Ateneo. So, that's one. But at the same time, we're looking at also, from the capacity standpoint, dapat mas-scale up na rin yung internet infrastructure. And how can we decongest some of the classrooms? Siguro yung senior high school, nakita namin, in advanced countries, pag independent na yung learner and more mature, you can implement a very good hybrid learning system as long as your internet infrastructure is there.
I'm down to my last two questions. Looking ahead, sobrang depressing ng mga sad truths about the education system and the learning crisis. So looking ahead, how long do you think it would take to put things in order?
At least a few years, I think. But I think by the time President Marcos steps down, there will be substantial improvements in the education system. I think he's empowered the department, he's empowered, and that has allowed us to empower our people also to be reformist in orientation. Sabi ko nga, we cannot use old methods. Kailangan makabago na tayo. Gumamit tayo ng teknolohiya. Gumamit tayo ng new methods, di ba? Dati, hindi na tayo nakaka-deliver ng libro kasi ang tagal natin yung pinag-aaralan pa yung manuscript, etc. Bakit yung private school nakaka-deliver ng libro, di ba? So, definitely, the old ways will no longer suffice.
Okay. So before we wrap up, I need to ask you, it's election season. Would you have run in this year's election if you did not get appointed to the DepEd?
Parang hindi na. Kasi I had been a 9-year congressman. I had been a 11-year senator. So, and I was barred from seeking re-election by the Constitution to the Senate. 2 terms lang pwede. So actually, pwede akong tumakbong congressman or governor. But I think I was looking forward to a new challenge. And tamang-tama, dumating yung alok ni Presidente na maging DepEd Secretary. So, I'm very happy where I am.
Okay. Your position, of course, here at the Department of Education is coterminous, of course, with the President, which expires 2028. Do you see yourself eventually running in the Senate again or even higher office?
Well, it's not something I'm closing the door to. But it's not also something that's top of mind at the moment because there's so many problems to think about. But definitely it's not something I'm closing the door to.
So that's Education Secretary Sonny Angara. Again, I'm Bonz Magsambol. Thanks for watching.